I'm so frustrated. Really frustrated. I don't know the answer, but I do know the answer. There it is. There's the answer. It's Leve. It's the yin-yang at the centre of the forces. And I'm currently embedded in the history of the theory, since Galileo. How do you understand the complexities of a rupturing beam in terms of the forces that held it together? If you snap a beam, at the point of snapping, the force that was holding it together is no longer holding it together. What is that force? How do you analyse it? It's elastic modulus, yes, and we know it's plastic modulus too, EI. We know that, the stiffness and the elasticity. We know it's Poisson's ratio, where you compress something and it spreads out the same distance. We know it's Euler with the rigid body axis theorem, with a rotation of a body equaling one rotation at the centre. All proven, both experimentally and through calculation, but you can't calculate what that force is. You can prove it exists by a load of methods that Love in 1892 documents, the various developments of the theory, or you can calculate it. And Leve calculates it. So a question that Leonardo da Vinci couldn't solve in 1498. He posed the problem perfectly, and that the link, funnily enough, get this, the link, I found this document to a little magazine article, very good, about the bending theory, introduced one page and a slice of translation from the Codex, page 84 of the Codex, 1967, Madrid, Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks. And there's a link to the full translation, which is no longer there. I trace back the link. It's the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, another American society. So the American Society of Civil Engineers, I contacted about the PCA tables 1942 with no reference and saying, there's the reference Leve, it fixes quantum, and they say, get lost. The bloody mechanical engineers are doing it as well. Why would they remove that article? There is something about Da Vinci there, but it's very light. It's not a translation of this. And I'd like to see that again. Because what it will say is, Da Vinci poses the problem perfectly, but can't calculate it. There'll be some ideas about how you might be able to in what he's saying. 1498 Da Vinci, 1915, Leve shows how to calculate it. He stands on the shoulders of all the people mentioned in Love 1892 and calculates it using matrix calculus by quantizing and assuming the standing wall of water in a water tank. That's the move. He introduces water as the medium of the load carrier, and by accidental design finds the nuclear force at the centre of water. The binding force of hydrogen and oxygen that creates water is the force that creates the universe. So he's found it by doing this standing column of a meniscus of water, particle thick, Euler's beam, but standing up and bending from the force of the water in the tank behind it. So you're just analysing the line, but you assume fixed points, the fixed point at the top and bottom. And that's just true, because there is no bending at the top or the bottom. There's pure bending at the top, and it's got nothing to push it, and pure tension at the bottom, it's got nothing to cause the tension. So they're fixed points. So you can see that has a bulge in it. Suddenly you can start to analyse it now using curves and mathematics straight into it, matrix calculus and quaternions. Solve the problem. Gives us the answer. 1915, he gives it, Leve gives it to engineering for his second engineering doctorate. But it's so redacted that you can't see. You don't go bloody hell. You go, oh, okay, great. He solved it. He solved it just so we can build concrete buildings. All the history that lies behind that document gets masked and hidden and muddled up and mundled, and nobody in civil engineering ever talks about it. Trust me, I've been trained as one. Nobody talks about this. When you do structural analysis, the meter 4 is introduced as a mind-blowing concept, and you move on. You're supposed to move on. I didn't move on. I went, what? A meter 4? And that snapped with me forever. What is the meter 4? The meter 4 is the bending. It's a space with bending in it. And it's defined, there's a brilliant guy who defines the idea of elasticity. You can either, what he defines as a sphere pushed into a ring of slightly smaller diameter. So its elastic properties are just being enacted, and you can then measure what effect that has. If it doesn't get any bigger, if the sphere, from pole to pole doesn't get any bigger when you compress the equator, by compressing it only a particle, you'll analyze you can see, something's happened. There's a compression inside. What is that compression? Analyze it using matrix calculus. It's a yin-yang of bending and tension. Look at my diagram from my thesis. It just shows the triangle bending and then the tension, ring tension does that. You can see the shape. Those are the two forces that create the yin-yang in pure 2 dimensions that are replicated across the entire cosmos as an inertial frame of reference. It's not inertial, it's the motion of a yin-yang. Above, anti-clockwise, below, clockwise motion of water. That rotating, contra-rotating waters creates a center of gravity. Stuff sinks to the bottom of the water, to where the inertial frame of reference is the yin-yang, and it's forced in there through increasing pressure as the water gets deeper. You just imagine that. As the water gets to infinite depth above this amazing inertial frame of reference, matter is created, and in the creation of matter there's sparks. So the sparks creates the matter existing creates the sparks, and light is created in the friction of that infinite density zone. One above and one below. The one above rotates anti-clockwise. So where the matter is, where we exist. And so we have a semicircle, a hemisphere of water above us, compressing us. And that water is of infinite depth. It has no surface, except it must have a surface. Where does that surface exist? At the fucking center. The surface of the water of an infinite depth is created at the very center, the particle size measured as Planck's constant. Because the surface exists there, it's trying to go back to where it should exist, on the outside, not the inside. Entropy says the surface can't exist there, it must exist there. It can't exist there, there doesn't exist. In that paradox, life is created, because time is frozen and infinite time is existing. The explosion of the matter and the light causes a void. Cavitation has occurred. A turbulence is created through the creation of the matter. It creates turbulence. This turbulence creates that moment of entropy, where one should get right inside there. But the entropy is outside, not inside. So it's trying to become disordered. And in trying to become disordered, it creates the energy that creates this sphere at the center. You've got the 2-dimensional forces, you've got a sphere. It's called the time particle theory. Reynolds B. Inch. So this time particle contains everything. Everything. The multiverse is the time particle. Now you can see it as a perfect sphere, now of illuminated light, the brightest, whitest light of the perfection of a sphere at this tiny dimension, but its surface is elastic because it's made from plastic. It's I. It's made from oil, carbon. It's plastic, has elastic properties, EI. So it's flexing. But the force of the depth of water, the water is also turbulent because the turbulence of the time particle, which is spinning at the speed c, variable, it's creating turbulence in the water around it, and that creates an effect, and it spins it out, and it pushes the water out, leaving a space, a gap in between, where there's oxygen, where the matter, which now exists in infinite time, which exists forever, as long as the bubble exists, infinite time exists. Infinite time only exists for the duration of Planck's constant. But inside there, all time is created. And the outside of that is the multiverse, flexing with the equal and opposite reaction to the turbulence that it creates in the water around it, creating a flexibility in the surface. And that creates dimples, like a golf ball, of infinite dimples. And that's described by n. There are n number dimples, and that's described by the collapse conjecture solution by Paul Dean Charlton II. And so there's the mathematics now that drives this idea of the time particle at the centre of the planet, which is flat. The two-dimensional force of the yin-yang at the centre and at the cosmos, inside this infinite depth of water, creates a space of that dimension. Massive space is created because of this expansion of the force at the centre in the duration of Planck's constant. It has infinite acceleration in a given duration of time, but has all of infinite time to carry out this motion. So you end up with a system that is just massive and that sustains itself at the centre. The planet, as you call it, is a disk, and the speed is faster the further away from the centre you are. So if you go to the Antarctica, you go round the ice wall faster. So there's no time dilation. There's just an absolute time, a centre, which is in motion, it's moving, arrow of time, and then from that point, everything goes faster and faster. So any measurement you make looks like it's round, a sphere. If you go into space, you're still that, you've taken your time where you were on the ground, and you've moved, and you've taken that time, that's you're that time on the ground where you left the ground, where you left as you move through. And then you can move back and forwards, and you'll go faster and slower, right, depending on where you are relative to the centre, which is the Earth. And that's why everything looks round, because you're still observing it. You know, you can see a curved horizon, for example, from an aeroplane. This is why when you take photographs from space, you're seeing it relative to the observer, whatever the image is. Flat Earth, as above, hemisphere, bubble of water, a bubble pushed into water. Below, water pushed into a bubble of atmosphere. The black and the white, and the two things that combined. So when we see the solar system, the reason it's on a flat plane is because it's a dimensional entity. And you're not seeing spheres, you're seeing the point on the circumference around which they rotate. Yeah, you're seeing the point of it. And because you know everything's round, that's round. And you try and see it as round, and you'll see it fly spaceship past it and satellites, you'll see it as round. It's just light. It's just light. So it's a wonderful thing that Laivé found in 1915 that they didn't tell us about. As above, so below. Below is the time dimension where consciousness exists. Our consciousness exists somewhere else, and we receive it via the cetaceans. Cetaceans are the motherships who download the mass of information that comes through. As mammals, we're sharing a mammal area of consciousness with the whales, the cetaceans in Wales. Shallow and right. We receive this consciousness through the whales, but it comes from the time dimension. As above, so below. The reason that they're not telling us the answer is because they're in charge down below. The Nazis have taken charge of down below and have enslaved the time people who live there, the entities of time, ourselves, who live there in our opposite dimension, in our heaven and our hell, if you like. So this is hell on earth, where we live, and it's as heaven as we like it to be, or as hell as we want it to be. You choose it. By choosing to make heaven on earth, you make reality come into the time people, yeah, properly. We're going to unite with the entities of the time dimension ourselves. That's what's coming. It's going to be really exciting. It's better than this shit. It's the best fucking story you've ever heard in your life, Dr. Laivé. And the last 2 days I've been telling this story and the history of the reason, the people involved in it. And I'm just starting on Laivé's history now with his new insights into the history of theory. And I want to weep. And weep and weep and weep. It's the best story you've ever read. And only I've read it. So far. X3, 22, 23. See you later.